welcome to the Two Bears podcast. I guess I'm the little bear in this scenario. I like to think of myself as a big bear, but as soon as you bump into someone like Don, you get a real reality check
Yeah, so yeah,
about the size.
I'm the big bear.
So Don's like 9'3".
Yep.
There's a photo of us from the event that we did together where I'm just like leaning on his chest, and my head is about up to his nipple. So I'm 6 and a quarter.
Yeah.
So that gives you a reference as to how big he is.
Yeah, I'm
So
six
yeah,
foot
go.
10, 6'10", 350 pounds. So
6'10", 350 pounds, otherwise known as a bear or a wall.
the funny thing is like where I come from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I have a Native American heritage, which was the Susquehanna Indians. And the Susquehanna Indians were known to be like the average was like 7'2". So I'm short. So for the tribe, it
The average in the tribe was 7'2".
was 7'2". And so the one of the uh like encounters of the English were meeting one of the Susquehanna chiefs, and they said that like when they showed up for the meeting, the chief came like walking into the room wearing a bear. Like he was big enough that he could wear a bear. So it's not lost that this is two bears, and I'm the size.
No, that's really cool. I wasn't gonna delve too much into the geopolitics of that, but I was gonna say I can't imagine what it was like for the natives, for the English who landed here to stumble upon 7'2"
Oh
natives
yeah.
dressed in
The
in bear skins.
the very first record was the French, and they were going up the Chesapeake Bay. And so what they would do is they would measure the height of the people that were on shore. And so however tall they were, they could triangulate how far away from the beach they were. And so they saw these
Yeah.
people on the shore, so they launched their boats. And the guy's like, right, and he goes, we kept rowing, and they kept getting bigger. We kept rowing, and they because you figure, the average Frenchman's like 5 foot tall. So
Yeah, they're little.
you have here you have a guy who's like 7'6". That puts them almost twice the distance away from the shoreline as they anticipated. And then when they get up on the beach, they're amongst giants.
Here be giants. Yeah, so I guess that really ties into you being a bear. I guess my association with the bear, well, my family is mostly Russian, so you do have that. But I think obviously I'm not as big as you, but I think that because I'm big and I'm really gruff on the outside, but I feel like I'm very loving when you get to know me, and that's like the imagery of a bear, even though the truth is that bears will maul and eat you. They'll stalk you for miles and miles if they can smell you, and they will eat you. They won't just kill you, they will tear you apart and eat you. You fuck around and find out.
Exactly. When did you start the journey in the culinary world? Like, what made you jump into the kitchen? Were you doing anything before you jumped into the kitchen?
All right, so I've actually really been cooking my entire life. So I was diagnosed with something near Asperger's on the autism spectrum when I was a kid. And how it played out was I was really not social at school, and I was really into books and reading. I would read everything and anything I could. I'd go to the library and just run through whole sections. And one of my favorite things to read was actually my mom's cookbooks and magazines. So my parents are Orthodox Jews and they keep very strict kosher, but they have cookbooks and magazines from all over the world. And as a child, I would read these and I'd look at the pictures of like shrimp, emerald shrimp etouffee, and cocktails in Williams Sonoma, and anything involving pork, bacon, pork chops, lobster, all these things. And I'd see these recipes and these pictures of them, and I knew that I wasn't allowed to eat them. And I would just fantasize about all these things from a very young age. I was obsessed with these exotic ingredients and these
Right,
and these cool foods. And at that point, I swore to myself, like one day I'm going to be able to eat these things.
right.
So fast forward, um, I cooked at home a lot. I would get kicked out of school, get punished, go to my room, sneak out of my room at like 1 in the morning, go down to the kitchen, try to make puff pastry. Like that
Right.
was that was like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. Then I studied biochemistry and genetics. I thought I was going to be a surgeon. I was really into like CRISPR-Cas9 gene engineering,
Right.
and I thought I was going to be a plastic surgeon, and that would be the perfect fusion of like my artistic side and the medical side. And I worked in restaurants, both back of house and front of house. I was a sous chef. I was a server. I was a bartender. I was a busboy. I washed dishes in boarding school. I always worked in the industry, but I never saw it as my final goal
Right.
until I was around 24 years old, and I was writing a paper, a dissertation on CRISPR-Cas9 gene engineering, and I had Netflix going on in the background, and I was like smoking weed, and I was ripping a bong and writing this paper, and I heard the classical music intro. It's like fall or spring sonata or something. And I look up and I see Chef's Table on Netflix, and it's showing the most beautiful food I've ever seen in my life. Now, even though I had access to the cookbooks and the cooking magazines, my family lived in a very like tight community. I had no exposure to Michelin or fine dining. I had no idea that anyone in the world was making food at an art level like that. And as soon as I saw it, it like awakened something within me. And I decided that I wanted to do that. So I dropped out of college in my senior year after getting into medical schools. And I signed up for culinary school in Thailand. I studied Thai cuisine. I DM'd all the chefs from the TV show. Gagaranan, number one in Asia, number four in the world, responded to my message within like minutes and told me he'd love to have me. So I dropped school. I signed up for culinary school and I moved to Thailand. And I ended up working at Gagan in Thailand for about 4 years. I also worked at Nam, or I staged at Nam, which is the most famous Thai restaurant of all times.
Right.
And I also worked at a restaurant called Ga, which is now a Michelin restaurant as well. And from there, it was just like head first, you know?
Right. That's
So
awesome.
that was yeah, that was about 11 years ago or something. So
Right.
I guess 11 years plus I was a sous chef for a year before and a line cook for around a year. So I'm probably looking at like 13 years in the industry,
Right.
which is nothing. Just nothing, you know? Like there's people my age who are I'm 34 right now. There's people who are 20 years deep.
Right. And it's funny because I tell people, when you're talking about time in the culinary industry, I always say double it because we don't work 40-hour work weeks. No, it's not like we work, 52 weeks a year at 40 hours a week. We work 52 weeks a year at, 80, 90 hours a week. So it's almost
Yeah.
like double time. If someone tells you 13 years, that's like 26.
Yeah, but on the flip side, someone my age could have also done it for 20 years, which is like 40, you know.
Right,
I bump into people all the time who have a lot more time experience than I do,
right,
but I was really lucky and I went straight from culinary school into like world 50 best restaurants and stayed.
right,
So, even though I have a little bit less time under my belt, the time that I do have has all been concentrated in extreme restaurants
right.
with like chefs that are special forces, and I was just
Yeah,
always um, lucky enough to surround myself with the best of the best. And it's like that's it's like pure concentrate, man. There's
right,
no watering down of that education and those hours spent in the kitchen.
right. Absolutely. Yeah, I cut my so for me it was like
Yeah.
I was 8 years old is like my first memory of like cooking. And it was like this little hot dog station outside of my great aunt's house in Marietta, Pennsylvania during Marietta Day. And so here I am, like this little 8, 9 year old kid, like grilling hot
Six
dogs.
foot seven.
Exactly. Grilling these hot dogs, like burning some of them to like beyond recognition, and people coming up and be like, "Oh, isn't this cute? Yeah, I'll eat the burnt one," you know, kind of thing. But it really
And you're
didn't.
like, it's not burnt, it's charred.
It's yeah, it's all different degrees of caramelization. Yeah, it was that's like the first time, like my first memory of cooking. And then when I got to when I was about 13 years old, there was I saw a special on PBS about the Culinary Olympics, and they were in the USA, the Culinary Institute of America's team in Germany, and was seeing what people were doing, and I was like, when I saw that, I was like, that's what I want to do. That is what I want to do. And
So
and so I
you were actually drawn to competition.
well, I mean, it was just like when I saw the level of artistry in the food and the ingredients. Like I was the kid that like I wanted new culinary experiences however I could get it. And so like if we were at that restaurant, they had escargot, guess who's ordering escargot? You know, and
Oh, brother, you and me both. All the weird shit.
exactly. And so and
As
so
much weird shit as possible.
and so uh so I started cooking, and my mom and I would like cook on Thursday after school. And my stepfather was kind of like you don't want to be a cook. He didn't want me. He's like, cooking's women's work. You don't need to be in the kitchen. Did everything to
Oh, that is not true.
kind of push. But that's, I mean, that was his thing. And so I loved pastries. I loved making desserts. And he comes up to me, he's like, I know you like the culinary stuff, but your son, you're like 6'8" and 235 pounds.
Yeah,
And
you should be on the O line, baby. What are you doing?
right, he's like, you have a 38 vertical jump. He's like, culinary schools don't have basketball scholarships. And so at that point, the basketball thing like really took over my life. I mean, it was you eat, slept, drank. I mean, everything was basketball.
I
Ended
bet
up
you were a
going,
beast.
and it was. I have a scar on my back from the backboard. It was from hitting the backboard. Uh,
No one else in the world has a scar on their back from the backboard.
and
That is
so
an only you thing.
I just remember because I hit the backboard, I'm running down the court, and they like stopped the game. I'm like, "Why did they stop the game?" And they're like, "There's, you're bleeding." I'm like, "Who's
You're
bleeding?"
dripping blood.
And it was me. Uh, but so I ended up going to culinary school, or not culinary school, but college for nutrition dietetics. And
Cool.
there was a time where I ended up the one of the local like theater productions was wrapping up. They wanted a wrap party, and they said, Don, you like to cook? Do you want to cook for us? And so, I mean, I just did. It was BS. I was kind of like, Costco, spanakopita corners, and like little, stuff like that, and whipped it up. But it like the bug got me. Like it was like, this is what I want to do. And
Was that the first time? Was that the first time you were hired to cook for someone?
probably. I mean, yeah, I was when I was younger, I was hired to like make desserts for people. Like literally,
Okay.
I'd make desserts. My parents would drive me to drop off like cakes and pies and things like that, and end up in Vermont, and was like looking for a job, and there was this Greek restaurant called the Lincoln Inn. So I walk into the Lincoln Inn, like no culinary experience whatsoever. And Tommy, the owner, a really old Greek guy, handed my resume. He looks at it and goes, flips through it. He goes, "You promise me you'll work hard?" I was like, "I promise you I'll work hard." Walks back in the kitchen, and he's like, "Jimmy, here's your new cook." And so, I'm going into the kitchen. The chef didn't even interview me. He was told to hire me by the owner. And so I walk in, and like 2 or 3 days later, have do like my first time working, and I'm on the grill station. So basically I'm making like sandwiches, BLTs, grilled cheese, burgers. And like I drove home, and the 45 minutes that it took me to get home, like my cheeks hurt. I was smiling so big. Like I knew this is what I want
Loved
to,
it.
yeah, this is what I want to do. And so at that point, I was in like I was in it. There's a story that I tell because I'm married. My wife Sarah and I have been married a long time. And it was one of those deals like in the culinary world, relationships take a beating, and and
Oh, yes.
and there was a time where my we're talking about getting married, and I pulled her aside and I was like, before we do this, I need you to understand that don't ever make me make a decision between you or the industry, because I'm married to the industry. You're my mistress. And and she took like 3 days to think about it, and she came back, and then after that it was,
Yeah, my wife would beat my ass.
but it was she understood what it was, that that once you become a member
But
of
I
the
mean, it's beautiful. That's your passion. That's your fire. That's what drives you,
right,
so a lot, most really passionate people and really creative artists, you realize you can't find that in another person. That's your art and your creativity, and you need to express that. And that's one thing that another human being normally cannot provide for you.
right,
That needs to be done through your work. And I think you actually said two very important things in your story. Number one, that relationships take beatings in the industry, which is something that I think not a lot of people are prepared for, because everyone knows that doctors and lawyers work long hours, but they normally have like the weekends off.
right,
They're normally weekend warriors. And for us, all the times that everyone else is out having fun, we're supplying that to them.
right.
And you miss birthdays, you miss holidays, you miss graduations, you miss events. You promise you're going to be there the next time, and the next time you miss it again because something came up.
Oh yeah.
And it's really hard on us and our partners. And there's no real solution to that, because the service that we provide is a service that people celebrate.
Right. And it's
Yes.
our life is, we don't celebrate Valentine's Day on February 14th. You know, it could be a
No,
couple
we
days
celebrate it
before.
every day because we love our wives.
Exactly. Uh, but it's like, even my kids, like, it's funny, they'll be talking to somebody and be like, "Oh, so when's your birthday?" And they tell them the birthday is like, "So what are you going to do on your birthday?" And like, "Well, we're probably not going to celebrate it this week. We'll probably celebrate it next week." And it's just because they know that there's an event on the books, and so we're going to be prepping 2 days before it, and a clean up afterward. They just know that we are going to celebrate the birthday, but it might not be on that day. And so, lucky for them, it usually ends up being birthday weeks. So
Yeah,
we're doing
yeah.
something special every day.
I mean, like, there's ways, just like you said, there's ways to work around it. And I think we all find our ways to work around. All of us who are successful in our personal lives find a way to mitigate and work around it.
Yep.
The other really important thing you said was that you showed up to a kitchen with no experience. And I think a lot of people are scared to do that. And a lot of people, spend a lot of money on culinary school, which I'm not a big supporter of at all. But the truth is if you show up to almost any kitchen and you tell them you're going to work hard, you have no idea what you're doing, but you love cooking and you want to learn, that's who I want to hire.
Right. That's
It might
it's
not be who I always hire, because like I'm looking for a sous chef,
right.
but like I don't want people who cooked at a bunch of different places and are going to bring the culture and that from those places, unless those places are places that I personally have a lot of respect for.
Right.
And even then, there's a lot of restaurants that make awesome food but don't have the kind of culture in their kitchen that I have in mind.
Right.
So when someone comes in and they're like, I've never cooked before, but I love it. I'm like, oh, you're mine now.
Well, that's
Welcome to the party.
and I tell people, it's like, I can't teach passion. I can't, or it's something you come to the table with. I can teach you how to slice, dice, and julienne. I can teach you how to make a hollandaise, but I can't teach passion.
You
It's
can't teach
something,
passion. You can teach discipline,
right,
but you can't teach someone how to keep going after a month of 90-hour weeks straight,
right.
That's within. Is that a cat? Did we get a cat?
I
Yes.
have I have a dumpster cat.
I love cats. I don't care where they come from. If it's a cat, I love it.
This cat's nickname is Murder Kitty. She, I'm the
Murder
only,
kid.
I'm the only one that she likes. She everyone else, she doesn't, she's not
She
vicious,
murders.
but yeah, she goes after them.
That's great.
But
I
there's a
love that.
one of the things I used to put, I like on my application, I would put how do you make hollandaise? Like is on the application. And one of the, and I always look at it, and it's funny because uh what I'm looking for is, how they answer the question. Because there's a couple ways you can get to the end of making hollandaise, but what is the answer? And my favorite answer is, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. What
Yeah,
will
you
get
would hate my answer to that.
well, what I'm looking for is the Google answer, because people will sit there and they'll Google hollandaise and then they write it in
And
there, and
just
it's like word for word the Google answer for how to make a hollandaise. So how do you make a hollandaise?
I mean, if I had to write it down, it would be like black peppercorn, star anise, tarragon, uh, simmered with white wine vinegar,
Right,
pass, right? An arrow, pass, an arrow, reserve, and then separate egg yolks and clarified butter.
right,
Right. And then I have a little sub note, boil the shit out of the butter until it starts to burn at the bottom but doesn't color.
right,
Pass it really quickly.
right,
Right. And then set up Bain Marie. Start whisking egg yolks. Slowly emulsify butter into egg yolks. When finished, slowly emulsify vinegar mixture and store near something hot. And I mean, it's one of the right ways to make hollandaise, but when
yeah.
you read it, you'd be like, what a douche.
Oh
Fuck.
no, it's you have to understand, like, I'm severely dyslexic, so the less I have to read, the better. So
Oh, then you'd love it because it would basically look like scribbled notes.
that's what it's like. People look at my recipes, it's
Yeah.
like, what is this? Because it's literally a list of ingredients and arrows.
That's so it's funny you say that because right before I went to Thailand, I was looking up all of Gagan's cuisine and it's all molecular gastronomy. So I'm looking up molecular gastronomy recipes. And I remember I saw one for orange fluid gel
Right,
and it had like 5 ingredients. It was like orange juice, lemon juice, water, salt, sugar, agar, or whatever the stabilizing agent was.
right,
And that was it. That was the recipe. There
yep,
was no instructions, and there was a picture of fluid gel.
right,
And looking at it, I was like, what the fuck? Right. And
yep,
now thinking back, if you can't look at the ingredients and just cook the recipe,
right,
then there's nothing wrong with that, but that's a different level of chef.
right,
There is the level of chef that you tell me what it is and you show me the ingredients,
right.
and I'm gonna fucking do it. You know?
Yep.
Like
There's Escoffier, the father of French cooking. If like his very
the mother of the sauces.
right, it's like you have this his original do you know how to tell the original Escoffier cookbook from the second edition, like first edition to second? There's
No, but I feel
okay,
like I'm about to find out.
you're about to find out.
Yeah.
There's three recipes for rat in in his first cookbook, and
Raton?
because he was a prisoner of war, and he put it in as a joke, like, he just, and of course this guy's working with Ritz, like Carlton and the hotels and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and they're just like, you got to take it out, you got to take it out, because people are going to think you're serving rat in
Yeah. I
in our
did not know
hotels.
that.
and
This is a
so
great story.
and so he ends up taking it out. But when you read his first cookbook, it's just a list. You do this, you do this, you do this. Ingredients. There's like no how to. It's just like, a list of stuff. He had to write a little a booklet to go along with it that basically had all the how to, because he was writing to chefs. He's like, everyone should just,
Yeah.
if you're in the kitchen, you know how to do this. And the people didn't, so he had to write a little a supplementary book just to
Yeah.
go
Put the
with
pan
it.
on the fire on medium heat.
Right. Well, it's like he had to, like, write out, this is what a stock is, because he'd just be like, beef stock, but like, and people were just like, okay, how do I make a beef stock now? So
Yeah.
it's I think I have 2 copies of that supplementary little book in my collection. So it's
On one of these podcasts, we're gonna have to go through that and just talk and
right,
talk about like what the food must have been like back then and how it's evolved. Because the Scoffier's name is still very powerful.
right.
I mean,
This
like
is
I don't know anybody who trained under him, but like he's one of the biggest names. He's bigger than like in real food, he's bigger than Gordon Ramsay. He's bigger
right, but
than Emerald. Like he's the progenitor of most of the technique we use. Because even
right,
I lived in France. I love France. I hated France before I lived there.
right,
I fell in love with France when I was there. I love the food. I still think that French cuisine is not so high on my list personally of
right,
what I believe to be the best cuisines. However, like now when I'm doing progressive cuisine, when I'm making Thai food, I don't make street Thai food. I make French sauces with Thai flavors infused into them.
right,
I use French techniques with Japanese ingredients or with Korean ingredients to make food that tastes like it's Japanese or Korean, but and its soul is Korean or its soul is Japanese, but its
right.
foundation is French.
Yeah,
And that's Escoffier.
absolutely.
You know,
Yeah,
that's
he,
Escoffier.
he's the father of like saute. Like they didn't really saute until like he came along. And then there's the conversation that I always want to have is, you have a Scoffier and then you have Fanny Farmer. And when Fanny Farmer, she was the person. So basically, in the United States, you have the Civil War, and then after the Civil War, there's a whole big dynamic change in the upper classes kitchen because they start losing their help. And
Are you a Mayflower? Are you a Mayflower family?
no, not at all.
Okay. I was just curious.
No, but so there's this dynamic change, and all of a sudden you have all of these ladies who have never cooked before because they've always been cooked for. And so what Fanny Farmer does is she basically codifies like recipes, ingredients, and specifically measuring, like what a cup is, and what a teaspoon is, what a tablespoon is. And it's really cool because basically her books are being released the same time as Scoffier's books are being released. And so
We're gonna have to go through those side by side.
yeah, it's amazing how like the practicality of her versus basically the artistic, genius of a Scoffier, and it's
Yeah,
both
so Escoffier is
coming
an
to print.
artist writing down his notes, and this woman is an author
Right,
publishing a cookbook.
right,
I'm also very interested in the fact that when these things were codified, I'm assuming it was right after slavery.
right.
And something that a lot of people don't know is almost all of our culture in America comes from the black slaves. They were the ones who were cooking.
Yep,
They brought the West African ingredients and spices and that knowledge, and all the food that we know as like Southern food or American food comes from them. And also they started jazz. They with gospel and jazz, they basically jump started the entire music industry.
yep.
Jazz turned into blues and country and rock, which turned
And
into like metal.
and the
Like gospel turned into pop and funk, and like it's just
the
crazy how much of an impact they've had and how little it's appreciated in modern times. And I'm very
right,
curious because Fanny is now writing this book, and I'm sure a lot of the food in it, if not most of the food in it, is coming from knowledge that she picked up from the African Americans, whereas Escoffier probably did not have a lot of contact with African culture in
right.
general, or limited contact. So I'm very curious, like what that variation is, because that's like the original split of like what became American cuisine versus like what based European cuisine.
Right. Yep. But yeah, there's
It's an
there's
interesting, controversial chapter to talk about.
I'm getting goosebumps because I was just talking about this the other day and about music, and they were talking about like jazz and blues and all this stuff, and I was just like, don't forget ragtime. Ragtime is another genre that is specifically put into the African American culture, And a lot of
Exactly.
times people try to jump over that. I'm like, no, gotta remember, because it's New Orleans. I love New Orleans food. It's
I've never been to New Orleans.
oh really?
We should save up and go to New Orleans. I feel like that would be an awesome adventure for us. And we
There's
could drive and hit a bunch of spots on the way, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. There's it's I went to New Orleans last year, and the time before that was pre-Katrina. And so when we went there, I went down Bourbon Street, and Bourbon Street is really touristy now. Before
I heard Bourbon Street's very dangerous now.
it
Someone
is.
someone the other day told us not to go down Bourbon Street during like Mardi Gras and stuff.
I mean,
Yeah.
you got pickpockets. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. Uh, I have kind of an advantage being 6'10", 350
I feel like
pounds.
I have an advantage being looking like I just got out of fucking prison.
Exactly. All I need is like a South African accent, and there's like no one's gonna bother me ever. Uh,
Yeah.
but there's so I was talking to a local, and they're just like, the old New Orleans is still here. It's just off Bourbon Street, and so they give me some places to hit, for the music, for the actual scene of what New
The
Orleans
culture, yeah.
yeah, used to be known for. And so I was there with my daughter Saffron, and we just hit food, places like I remember it's like I wanted a po' boy, like I wanted a real po' boy, not one of those like commercialized ones. And so I was
I've
like,
never had a real po' boy.
so well, I was like, where can I go in New Orleans and get an honest answer for where to go for a po' boy? And it was like the Voodoo Museum. We're gonna go to the Voodoo. So went to the Voodoo
Yes.
Museum. There's a girl behind the counter. She's the priestess. She was working the gate, and we're just like, where do we go? And she's just like, she gave me the list. So like, it's like, if you want seafood, you go here. If you want the original, you go here. All that kind of stuff. And the cool thing was, it's like
What's the
after
original? Is the original shrimp?
the original's beef.
Beef.
It's the original's beef,
I
and
did not
and
know that.
so after we got our po' boys and all that kind of stuff, and I asked the guy behind the counter. I was like, the voodoo priestess, what does she order? And he knew. It was like, so we bought her, po' boy and Coke, and brought it back to her as a thank you for pointing us in the right direction.
Love it. Love it.
So I should say, moving forward, we have talk about the Fanny Farmer, talk about Escoffier, and then I question the people who are listening to this podcast to like drop us a line on what you would like us to talk about, and what I think, Zev, what you bring to the table, what I bring to the table, from the idea of food and culture, is kind of diverse. I'm more focused on Mediterranean, Italian, Spanish, Greek kind of influence. You know,
Yeah, and I'm really Southeast Asian and South American, so
and so
between the two of us, we've got a lot of the world covered,
exactly. So I'm interested to see what the people who are listening to this or watching this, what would you be interested in hearing about and our take? Because I've been cooking since 1997, 1995. So it's been it's been a while. I've been in it for a while, and I've worked. You talk about working in like Michelin places and like like top tier restaurants. I've staged in a couple. Uh, I've worked in the mom and pop scene. There was recently there was a guy who needed help, and I walk in, and his kitchen's so small I can't even stand up in it. Like the can't stand up straight.
I
And
believe it.
it is like, so I need to hire cooks for it. And in my like help wanted ad, I didn't put that I was looking for cooks, looking for sous chef, I put I'm looking for pirates. You know, I'm looking for people who can get stuff
Kitchen
done.
pirates, yeah.
Exactly. And that's something we can talk about too, is barbecue. And because the term buccaneer for, you know, the pirate is actually
Yeah.
comes from the French, and their island, they basically had an island where they would produce meat, and your boat would pull up and they would load on the smoked and cured meats. And the Spanish came in and like just wrecked them twice, and they couldn't recover. So they're just like, we're gonna go screw the Spanish. So they got on their boats and they basically started raiding and pillaging the Spanish, and that's where we get buccaneer from. So it's actually, you know, it's a bunch of angry chefs got on a boat and wreaked havoc on the Spanish. And
I
you
did not
know,
know that. That's very cool.
and so it's like that's why for English speakers, buccaneer isn't really it's not a pejorative term as like a pirate, and
Yeah,
the reason being is because they only attacked the Spanish.
that's really funny. I mean, I've always considered myself to be a pirate, so now I officially know that I am one.
Yep, there you go.
Now,
You pull that qualification.
yeah, so definitely we want to hear what everybody who's listening, we want to hear what you guys want us to talk about. We're definitely going to talk about all ends of the industry, front of house, back of house, QSR, which is a quick service restaurant like Chipotle, through mom and pops, through casual, medium casuals, high end, super fine dining. I also want to get in on the food culture in different countries and farming practices, agricultural practices in different countries, and how different people who aren't chefs are also heavily tied in to our industry and into what we do. This feels
Absolutely.
good. I like this.
Yes, it is.
This
I
feels
mean,
good.
it's what because right now
I
it's
like
like
this.
there's a whole bunch of things I'm not talking about just because, you
Oh
know,
yeah, oh
it's
yeah, me
just
too. I'm trying to keep it mostly to our intros and what's gonna happen. Because I could sit here and talk to you about a million different things right now, but
yeah, because like you just
I
mentioned,
think we
like,
should no, I just mentioned enough for 3 more hours of this, you know.
yeah, it's because when you get into there's a lot happening with the quick service industry, and you know, with places shutting down and things like that. And uh you know, it's a model that, you know, I keep, you know, people keep trying to tell me about it. I'm just like, you have to understand, you know, it's a specific business model within the food industry. And you know, there's some hiccups, and they're just running into those hiccups right now. But I'll save that
Yeah.
for that episode.
Awesome. We can talk about how Red Lobster closing down is going to absolutely devastate the seafood market and industry because they've been setting the bottom line price for America for who knows how many decades, and now that that's gone, people will charge whatever they want for lobster. People will stop buying lobster, and who really suffers in the end is the billions of animals that are going to get killed and not sold because of the market.
Yeah,
You know, like
exactly. All right,
yeah, yeah.
very good. So
But it was an absolute pleasure.
sure thing, brother. And we'll get together sometime next week and put another one together.
Absolutely.
All right, sir.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. All right, Little
we'll
Bear signing out.